talk originally?
Don't know.
Original one, don't you remember something about doctors?
Avoiding your doctors.
All right, so the original talk tonight was going to be secrets to avoiding your doctor. I decided, because I've done that at least 3 times recorded or more. If you want that talk, it is on Facebook. And if you go back in the videos, you will be able to find that. So I've actually pivoted because of an influx of a certain kind of client that we've been getting, and it's fibro. What is the name of our talk tonight?
It is From Fatigue to Freedom,
From Fatigue to Freedom,
a new way forward with fibromyalgia.
a new way forward with fibromyalgia. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Sorry if you wanted the other one, but I do have it multiple times. That one's been a pretty recurring one that I've done. So this one we haven't talked about very often. So that's why I did decide to go in that direction. So what I want us to do is start off by starting with an open heart and an open mind, and thinking about what can I learn here that may affect a friend or family member. Because when we talk about fibromyalgia, a lot of people don't quite understand what it is, how it affects people. But when we start explaining it, you may notice family members who actually have these issues and they're not even aware of it. So what we're going to jump into is a patient. This isn't her real name, but we're going to call her Jane. And Jane started off as being energetic, outgoing, going through school, going through college, everything was going well. Started a job, then she had a child, and then the work, taking care of the child, got a little stressful. And so what she started noticing is that she was more tired, and she was tired all the time. Not just sometimes, but all the time. Her sleep habits, they weren't working. She just couldn't sleep. She was restless all the time. She couldn't be in that calm state. And then the last thing she noticed is actually she started getting pain. But the pain was weird because it never actually stayed in one location. It would move around. That's very common for fibromyalgia people. What I need you to also understand is if it is in one location, but it fluctuates up and down, that can be another indicator of somebody who can have fibro. So when we look at this, we need to understand that if we have a friend who's talking about chronic fatigue, it could actually be fibro. If we have a friend who's talking about chronic sleep issues, it could be fibromyalgia. And if we have somebody who has pain that is constantly there and gets worse with stress, it's probably fibromyalgia. So these are common symptoms that we need to be aware of. With that being said, we also need to understand that there is a lot of misdiagnosis or cross-diagnosis that can happen with fibromyalgia. So fibromyalgia is commonly cross-diagnosed or misdiagnosed or co-diagnosed with autoimmune diseases. There is an autoimmune marker in fibromyalgia. It's also diagnosed with chronic fatigue. So like I was saying, the fatigue is one of the markers. The key markers that we look for with true fibromyalgia are neurological markers. And understanding fibromyalgia is a neurological issue. It can have chemical components, but it's usually neurologically driven. Then we can understand that if the brain shows it to us, that person has it. But the symptoms of chronic pain that a lot of people recognize with fibromyalgia don't always happen in one specific region. So we're going to go through classic fibromyalgia, what we see in it, and we're going to go through other areas in the brain and understand that it can show up differently and look the same, can be diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but it's a processing issue. And then the last one that is commonly overriding with fibro is going to be neuropathy. That means nerve pain, chronic pain all the time. We also can see people with fibromyalgia who can have chronic low-grade pains in areas, even though there shouldn't be any pain there. behind the head, in joints, in different areas. And that's related to the brain being more aware of symptoms or more aware of pain than it should be. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the different brain waves. If you're new, I'll go into the brain waves, show you exactly where the frequencies are when we're looking at it and how it applies. So we're going to start with gamma. Gamma is going to be 39 to roughly 100, or we can put infinity. Gamma is high. Gamma is that, and when I explain this, understand I'm explaining it for the frontal lobe. I'm not explaining it for the occipital lobe or the back of the brain, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe. I'm explaining it what you experience in your executive or frontal lobe function. So that's going to be in that connected feeling state, that so if you've ever been to a concert and you just feel completely connected to everybody, that's that gamma state. If you've ever seen pictures of monks meditating and they're able to meditate and they're really warm and everything around them is cold and they're not cold, that's going to be in that gamma state. So very high energy state. We cannot function all the time in gamma because of how much energy it does take, but it is a state that we want to be able to get into. Some people might call it enlightened, but that's the gamma state. Below gamma is beta. Beta is going to be 13 to 38 hertz. In general, beta is described as being in the stress state. That's being in fight or flight. It can get more complex where we do high beta and low beta, but for simplicity purposes today, we're just going to talk about as beta as being bad. That's the stress state. Then there's alpha. And alpha is going to be running from 8 to 12 hertz. Now, when I talk about a hertz, it means how often the nerve fires per second. Alpha is being in the zone, in the flow. Alpha is when your body, you're waking up on the right side of the bed. It's when you can see what the next thing you need to do when you're playing a sport. Alpha is really, really productive. Between alpha and beta is a specific frequency called SMR. It's called sensory motor rhythm, and it's 12 to 15. So you can see it steals a little bit of alpha and a lot of beta. And SMR is only found in a very distinct region in the brain, and it's right in the middle, back of the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe goes from the ear forward, and it's right in the back there, and that is where you find your SMR, or your sensory motor rhythm. That area is very important. We're going to get into that, but I need you to be aware that frequency is only found in one part of the brain, and that's where we're looking at that. Below alpha, we do have theta. And theta is 3.5 to 7.99. And theta is going to be light sleep, intuition. Theta is where we're going to come up with new ideas, new expression. Theta is really important for emotional healing. Alpha and theta will be involved in that. Then we come down into delta. Delta is 1 to 3.49. Delta is deep sleep, and delta is actually when you do physical healing. When you're healing, you need to be able to get into this. So you go through cycles when you sleep, and you need to be able to produce REM sleep when you're actually doing cognitive healing, and you need to be able to produce delta when you do physical healing. And this is why people, if they are severely damaged due to an accident, can be put in induced in comas, because if you put the person in delta, it can actually make their body physically heal. So as we look at this, we got gamma, beta, SMR, alpha, theta, and delta. All these frequencies are going to come into play. So if you want to know, we can go through it again, but that's basically what we're looking at. So what we're going to look at now is what happens and what happens with the different frequencies. And I need you to understand fibromyalgia, the way it's diagnosed right now, if you go to an allopathic provider, that means like your medical doctor, is they push on certain points and say if you have more of these sensitive points, then I think it's 11 out of 18, then you have fibromyalgia. That's pretty barbaric in my explanation of what actually fibromyalgia is, because we can actually neurologically see what's going on. So when we look at the brain for fibro, there are very specific areas that are affected. And I'm going to do the easy ones first. So this is going to be the left side of your brain. This is going to be the right side. And what we need to understand is there's certain areas that get affected. The one that is the cardinal sign of fibromyalgia is the right frontal lobe. So this is going to be the front of the brain, the back of the brain, the front of the brain, the back of the brain. Now, in the brain, when you have fibromyalgia, there's a very specific pattern that shows up. And that pattern is going to be a theta divided by alpha frequency. And I'll go into the actual ratio, but what I need you to understand is that this is brought about by a certain way of dealing with stress. So that ratio should be greater than 1.0, and for fibro, it needs to be greater than 0.80. So that means you need equal amounts of theta to alpha, and you have less theta to alpha, that's going to predispose you to fibromyalgia. So when we look at the frequencies, and we remember theta is 3.5 to 7.9, and alpha is 8 to 12, and beta is 13 to 38. What we need to understand is that when you're really, really stressed, you're more prone to produce alpha and beta. These are fast brainwaves, fast processing brainwaves, fast moving brainwaves. So you're stressed out, you want to process, move, figure out more things. So if the left and right is less than 0.8, you have the cardinal marker of fibromyalgia. But it can be even more complicated than that. The left side could be at like 1.0 and the right side could be at 0.2. You will have fibromyalgia. This is the cardinal marker of fibromyalgia. Brain processing quickly. So the people that have fibro are commonly very fast thinkers in the beginning. But there are other markers of fibro. If you have all of these, you're going to have definitely fibromyalgia issues. The next thing that we're going to see happen is the back of the brain. You're going to have a theta over beta ratio that is less than 1.8. And the theta, again, is the slow brain wave, and the beta is the fast brain wave. Why does this happen? This is where your stress management happens, is the back of the brain. This is the subconscious. This is your processing. So if your subconscious is running too fast, again, that means you have too much beta. In the frontal lobe, again, you have too much alpha. So you have too much of the fast frequencies. The back of the brain is going to be immune related as well. It controls about 30% of your immune system. So if the back of the brain is processing too quickly, you have poor stress tolerance, low immune system, you're predisposed to self-medicating behavior, but your front of the brain is processing too quickly as well, so you can't calm down. So you can overreact and flare up your immune system. Quite commonly, what we see is that in fibro, the right side of the brain is stronger than the left. The other common marker that we see in fibromyalgia is that you have right side beta higher than left side. So what does this mean? You have more of those fast brain waves again. So we got fast brainwaves in the back, too much fast brainwaves in the front, too much fast brainwaves on the right side. With too much fast brainwaves on the right side, this is going to push us into that predisposition to depression as well. And then the cardinal last marker, like the cardinal sign one is the theta over alpha ratio. So we have that. If you just have that and it's off, you can have chronic pain issues, fatigue, and sleep problems. No questions. And the crazy thing is when we can train you with the adjustments, neurofeedback, the laser, the literally light switch turns off. The pain will turn off as soon as the number drops or goes up above 0.8. When we see that flip, we'll literally watch pain issues go away if that's the major driver. It's a light switch on and off because it's making you more hypersensitive because your brain is running too fast. But if you also have it too fast in the back, too fast on the right, it's really going to set you up. Then the last marker that we usually see is the middle part of the brain that you slow down. There's an alpha ratio where it's low alpha, which is 8 to 9, divided by high alpha, which is 11 to 12. And if that is less than 1.5, you're healthy, you're good, your memory works well. The problem with this part of the area is if it's slow, where you produce too much low alpha, you fatigue, your memory stops working, and it also is a driver of the immune system. This is where I see about 70% of the immune system function coming from. So if this number is higher, the back of your brain is lower, the front of your brain is lower, the right side of your brain, you're producing too much beta, you have all 4 markers of fibromyalgia. That is classical fibromyalgia that we'll see in patients. Do they need all 4? No, you can have just one and it will hurt. But if you have that, and then you also pile on inflammatory foods, so things that are high in salt, things that are processed, things that are high in carbohydrates, that are high in sugar, that will boost insulin, turn off NF-kappa beta, which is a chronic inflammatory cytokine storm. Basically, I'm telling you, if you have the brain that is sensitive and inflammation that you eat, you're going to be more prone to pain than you should be, and you're going to experience more pain than you should be because the inflammation is actually flaring and causing you more pain sensitive. That is your true fibromyalgia. But we'll commonly see people diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and they will have other areas of the brain involved. So other areas, we will also see people in the frontal lobe at FZ, and they will have too much delta. Now, what is the goal of the frontal lobe? The frontal lobe is your executive center, your control center. Your frontal lobe's job is to literally keep you understanding what's going on. It's literally the operation manager. If you want an analogy to it, the frontal lobe is like mom running the house. If mom is good, house is fine. If mom is fatigued, house can fall apart. That's the frontal lobe. If you produce too much fatigue brainwave in your frontal lobe, sleep brainwave, which is delta, you can be prone to chronic pain issues and thinking problems, which is quite often seen in fibromyalgia. Remember how I talked about the high-low alpha ratio? This is going to be your IQ, your recall speed, your ability to actually have your memory work correctly. This is that ability to recall. If we want to actually drive specific memory areas in the brain, we can use laser as well. But we want to get back to this. What's driving that pain in the fibromyalgia case? If you're chronically fatigued and your delta is greater than 9.0 in the frontal lobe, you can have chronic pain issues just because your brain is fatiguing. So we can have multiples. We can have this and all of this. So you're in chronic pain, chronic fatigue, chronically tired, can't move, and then you start eating different foods to try to help yourself feel better. If you are chronically in stress, you will decrease the amount of dopamine you have, which means you will feel pain more. If you're in chronically stressed, you won't get out into the sun and you won't produce as much serotonin and you'll feel more pain. So these things all compound on themselves. So when we look at clients, we'll do questionnaires to see Are they dopamine deficient? Are they serotonin deficient? If they are, we want to help drive that up. The last marker that we see that can cause chronic pain is the very top middle part of the brain. And this is a theta divided by SMR ratio. So that's that SMR I was talking about. That needs to be less than 3.0. This is also where common ADD comes from. This is where you got to move to feel calm comes from. What I'm basically telling you is if the brain fatigues, then what you'll do is you'll produce more theta than SMR. You'll feel pain because you can't process as quickly. The brain fatigues, you'll produce more delta in your frontal lobe, and you'll feel more pain because your brain is fatigued and you can't process quickly enough. What we usually see happen is it starts with fast, fast, fast. Too fast in the frontal lobe, anxiety, pain, fatigue, issues coming from that. Too fast in the back of the brain, can't process enough. And if you keep pushing long enough, then you fatigue the front of your brain and you can get pain from that. And you can fatigue the middle part of your brain and you'll get more pain for that. These are the three major patterns that we see with people who have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue issues. The first one that I explained in detail, that's the one that we see quite most often, but we do see these other two. What we need to be aware of, though, is that what's driving this is a body in dysautonomia. That means too much stress and your body's in that fight or flight response. If you do that for too long, you fatigue. And if you fatigue, you get the FZ or CZ middle part of the brain, fibro. If it's early stress, then you get all this side where you speed up the frontal right part of the brain, speed up left and right side of the brain, speed up the brain, and you start getting issues. So you can see too much stress can drive this. Gut health is really, really important. Like I was talking about earlier, if your digestive tract is not working correctly, we cannot move the neurotransmitters from there up to the brain. So if we can't make them in the gut, we can't use them in the brain. Serotonin, if it's at high levels, will make you not feel as much pain. Dopamine, high levels, normal levels, not feel as much pain. So these are pain modulating substances. If you have a bad gut, you will not make enough serotonin and dopamine, and it won't be able to be moved to the brain, and you will feel more pain than you need. So we have to make sure serotonin and dopamine are good. We can also see issues where if you don't have enough testosterone or estrogen, because those are anti-inflammatories in your body, they can actually cause you to feel more pain because they also determine the binding. So, example, if you have not enough testosterone, dopamine will not bind correctly. You can feel more pain. If you don't have the right amounts of estrogen, estrogen determines the binding of serotonin. You will feel more pain. So these things cross mingle. We also need to look at the vagus function. Does your vagus nerve, the nerve that controls your gut and communicates to your brainstem, those neurotransmitters, does it work correctly? If it doesn't, you can't move those neurotransmitters up to your brain and be able to actually heal. So you can see it can get quite complicated. But what we need to understand is you can fix it. We can fix it with neuron laser, the actual brain frequencies. We can fix underlying inflammatory processes that can make you feel more pain. These are things like oxygen saturation to the brain should be at 97%. Blood sugar stability should be between 85 and 100. If you're too high or too low, that will cause chronic inflammation. HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, that's going to push up cortisol, which can push up insulin and blood sugars and cause more inflammation itself. And then finally, gut. These are the big ones that we commonly see. There are more, but these are the big ones that we commonly see. If we take care of that, then we can see the body isn't driving the inflammation. Then we got to make sure the vagus nerve is communicating correctly. If it is communicating correctly, we can move those neurotransmitters. If the gut is healthy, then we can make those neurotransmitters. If the gut isn't, then we got to fix the gut. So you can see fibromyalgia is not as simple as you have these points, take this pain med, and usually they'll give you a med such as an antidepressant to drive up serotonin, but it doesn't last. But if you're somebody who has brain-based fibro, you get the med and it doesn't touch it. Your fluctuations daily are literally dependent on how you feel. how you experience the world. That's a brain-based form. If you eat differently and start feeling better, then it can be chemical form. But it can be multiple forms at once. So you can have a combination of multiple things going in here. What we need to do is figure out what's going on in the brain. Do you have brain fibro? Or do you have gut functional med fibro? Or do you have different functional neuro? And we have to go through it and what's driving it to be able to help you figure out how to stabilize it. Once we know where it is, then we can help you stabilize it. If you have the brain base, that's the easiest. If that doesn't come back, all those markers that I talked about, then we have to start looking for underlying inflammation drivers. That gets harder. Then we have to start doing blood tests to start seeing what's going on. Are you overreactive? God forbid you could have an autoimmune disease where you're actually attacking your own muscles, or you're attacking different joints or cartilage or different things like that. That could be causing you to have chronic pain. So we have to look into all of these things, do different blood tests to see, do you have immune reactive problems, or do you have brain-based problems? What's actually going on? So you can see it can get quite complex, but when you have a practitioner like myself who's taking care of it like lots of times, then it's quite simple to go through. This is what we usually see, and then next level, next level, next level. So the takeaway I want you to have is, if you have a friend or family member who has chronic pain and pain meds don't work, they probably have fibro. If they have chronic sleep issues and they've tried a lot and they don't get better, they probably have a brain-based form of sleep that could be correlated to fibro. And if they have fatigue issues, and it doesn't matter what they eat or what's going on, they could have that brain that's stuck in that fibro state. So knowing that makes you aware that you could help them. You can show them a way to help themselves. So my hope and my prayer is you help that person who's literally at the end of the rope, doesn't know what to do, has given up, it is done. And we see those people all the time. And then we give them hope because we can actually show them what's going on. And you can be that light for Jane or Joe or Bill or whoever that person is, and show them there are other ways to get answers. If they want different results, they have to try new questions. If what they've done in the past fails, why would you keep doing it? If it's failing, try something new. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for taking the time. And if you have a friend or family member who has chronic fatigue, who has sleep issues, who has chronic pain issues, get them to watch this video. We'll have it posted in the next couple of days, and they'll be able to get answers to what's going on. And we can run a simple test, do some questionnaires and see what's going on, and be able to give them answers that usually they have never had. So thank you and have a blessed night.